This is Planning Your I Do from You Had Me at I Do. For over a quarter century, You Had Me at I Do has been helping couples say, I do. We bring more than 400 weddings of real-world experience as an officiant and a DJ, and this podcast is packed with what you, as the bride and groom, need to know, what you're wondering about, and what's keeping you up at night. No judgment, no fluff, just real answers and ideas for real planning. Here's today's episode.
Usually, when you picture the early days of planning your wedding, there's this expectation of just like pure romance.
Right, the bliss bubble.
Yeah, exactly. The bliss bubble. You imagine tasting cakes and, touring beautiful venues, just sort of floating through the process.
And then reality hits.
Oh, man, it hits hard. Because suddenly you start trying to bring two different families together. You're blending two distinct cultures, or maybe, two different religions, or just two totally contrasting sets of family expectations.
Yeah, which is incredibly stressful.
It really is. Suddenly, your perfectly planned day feels less like a celebration and honestly a lot more like a high-stakes diplomatic summit. You're just desperately trying to keep the peace.
It is the absolute definition of a high-pressure situation for, so many couples. I mean, you're thrilled to be getting married, obviously.
Of course.
But beneath that excitement, there is often this massive undercurrent of anxiety. You feel caught right in the middle of these two worlds, and you're just terrified of offending someone or, leaving a vital piece of your own heritage behind.
So if you are listening to this right now and feeling that exact tension, like if you're staring at your partner across the kitchen table wondering how on earth you're going to make both of your families happy, we completely see you.
We do.
And that's actually the entire mission of our deep dive today. We've pulled together a bunch of sources to really help you through this. We're looking at articles on cultural blending, some sociological perspectives on family dynamics, and most importantly, our own case files.
The real world stuff.
Exactly. We're pulling directly from our 26 years of experience and, the notes from over 400 weddings we've personally officiated at You Had Me at I Do.
Yeah, our goal today is to give you a really clear, actionable roadmap. We want to show you how to approach blending your traditions with genuine curiosity and structural clarity.
Because it is possible, right?
Oh, totally.
Mm-hmm.
The beautiful truth we have learned from all those weddings is that you absolutely can navigate two families and two traditions without ever choosing sides.
Yeah.
You don't have to pick a winner, and you definitely don't have to dilute your identities to make this work.
I love that. So, before we can even begin to plan the actual events of the day, we kind of have to talk about the foundation. It feels like the biggest mistake a couple can make is just assuming they know what their families want.
Yes.
Rather than actually sitting down and having a structured conversation about it early on.
Oh, waiting too long is just a recipe for disaster. We see couples wait until the venue is booked, the timeline is totally set, the guest list is printed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then they finally ask their parents about traditions. And that is usually when they discover that, one family was fully expecting a traditional church mass, while the other family was banking on a highly specific cultural tea ceremony.
And there's just no time for it.
Exactly. At that point, you're trying to retrofit deeply meaningful traditions into a timeline that simply cannot hold them. So you really have to start having these conversations the very moment you get engaged.
Right.
First, you talk with each other to align on your own values, and then you sit down with each family separately.
Okay, but let's talk about how to actually open that conversation with your parents or, your future in-laws. Because walking into the living room and announcing, hey, we're doing things our way, is probably going to trigger some intense defensiveness.
Oh, it slams the door on collaboration immediately. They will just shut down. The psychological shift you need to make here is framing the conversation around honor rather than negotiation.
Honor, not negotiation.
Right. You aren't walking into that room to ask for permission to change their traditions.
Yeah.
But you're also not there to lay down the law. You're actually asking for meaning.
So what does that look like in practice?
You sit down, look them in the eye, and say, we want to beautifully celebrate both of our backgrounds on our wedding day. Help us understand what is most important to you.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, you're looking for the elements they would genuinely be heartbroken to see missing. When you ask someone to explain the meaning behind a tradition, their defensiveness it melts away.
Because they feel valued?
Exactly. They feel valued, they feel heard.
It kind of reminds me of packing for a massive international trip.
Okay, yeah.
If you try to bring your entire closet, the suitcase just bursts, it becomes way too heavy to carry, the zippers break, and the whole trip is kind of ruined by the baggage.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it, honestly.
Yeah.
Because if you try to pack 20 different cultural traditions into a 45-minute ceremony, the suitcase bursts.
Right.
The event just becomes this chaotic blur.
You're right.
And ironically, none of the traditions end up feeling special because they're all so rushed. Which brings us to the core rule we give literally every couple we work with.
The 2 to 3 rule.
Yes. Ask each family for exactly 2 or 3 non-negotiables, not 10. Not a laundry list of every ritual their ancestors ever performed, just 2 or 3.
Because depth beats breadth, right? Giving a massive amount of weight to a few things is so much more impactful than, just lightly touching on a dozen things.
Precisely. Let me paint a picture of how this actually plays out. There's a story from our case files, this incredible Hindu-Christian couple.
Oh, yeah, I remember this one.
They were incredibly anxious about blending their worlds. So they sat down with their families and applied this exact rule. Out of all the possibilities, they narrowed it down to just 4 non-negotiables for the entire wedding day.
Which is wild. 4 for the entire day. That just sounds incredibly liberating. Remind me what they chose.
Okay, so they chose a Hindu garland exchange during the ceremony, a Christian blessing delivered personally by the groom's grandfather, a fully bilingual printed program so nobody felt lost, and a fusion menu at the reception that heavily featured both families' signature dishes.
And that was it.
That was literally it. Everything else about the day, the timeline, the venue, the music, the decor was entirely flexible. Because they focused on those 4 pillars, they created a day that felt deeply intentional and incredibly grounded.
Yeah, because doing 3 or 4 traditions with immense reverence is always going to be more powerful than just rushing through 12 of them to check boxes off a list.
Exactly.
Okay, so now that a couple has these 2 or 3 non-negotiables from each side, let's say, I don't know, they have a specific cultural unity ritual and a religious blessing they need to include. They have the ingredients, but they need a container, right? They need a physical framework to actually hold those elements.
Yes, and finding that container is the next major step. You're basically choosing your ceremony structure based on, well, the hundreds of weddings we've analyzed and officiated at You Had Me at I Do. There is no single, correct answer.
Right. It depends on the couple.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we do see 4 proven approaches to blending traditions that tend to solve different logistical and emotional problems.
Okay, let's dive into those structures. What if a couple is dealing with 2 traditions that are just fundamentally, religiously incompatible? You can't always just mash them together.
Right, and in those highly specific cases, the best approach is often hosting 2 ceremonies.
2 totally separate ceremonies.
Yes. Sometimes a couple will hold a traditional, highly observant ceremony for one family, maybe like a smaller, private event in a place of worship on a Friday, and then a separate, more secular or distinct ceremony for the other family on Saturday.
That makes sense.
It really is the ideal solution when the religious sacrament simply cannot legally or spiritually be altered, or when the families just need fully distinct, uninterrupted experiences to feel that their heritage is being respected.
Yeah, that relieves so much pressure, just allowing each tradition to breathe on its own. But what if the traditions can coexist? How do you weave them without it feeling, disjointed?
That brings us to the second structure, which is one blended ceremony. This is definitely the most common and honestly, often the most emotionally resonant format.
Because it's all happening together.
Exactly. It involves thoughtfully weaving elements from both traditions into a single cohesive narrative. The real trick here is finding the thematic overlap.
Thematic overlap, okay. What does that look like?
Well, you might have a processional that uses traditional instruments from one culture, followed by an opening welcome in 2 languages. You look at the meaning behind the rituals and place them where they flow naturally.
Oh, I see.
Like putting a cultural ritual that symbolizes welcoming the new family right at the beginning of the ceremony, and then placing a religious blessing over the marriage right at the end.
I can see how that requires a lot of intention to get right.
Right.
But what if one culture's traditions are extremely solemn and ceremony-focused, while the other culture is heavily focused on the party, like the dancing and the food?
That is a brilliant observation, and it leads perfectly into our third structure. We call it the ceremony plus fusion reception.
Okay, tell me about this one.
We often see couples experience just a massive wave of relief when we introduce this option. Basically, you keep the actual ceremony quite simple and streamlined, honoring just 1 or 2 key non-negotiables. And you let the reception do the heavy lifting for the cultural celebration.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, because you don't have to force a high-energy cultural dance into a quiet, solemn ceremony. You save it for the reception where it truly belongs and where it will be celebrated the loudest.
That makes total sense. Put the elements in the environment where they'll actually thrive.
Right.
What about a situation where the couple themselves aren't particularly religious, but both of their families are deeply devout? That feels like a very delicate tightrope to walk.
It is delicate, yeah, but it's highly manageable, using our fourth approach, which is a secular ceremony with cultural moments.
Secular with cultural moment.
Exactly. This allows the couple to remain authentic to their own beliefs while still honoring their parents. The key here is framing the religious rituals as heritage rather than strict doctrine.
Oh, I like that distinction.
Yeah, you might include a beautiful unity ceremony drawn from one culture or have a beloved elder read a piece of scripture, but the officiant frames it around honoring family history, ancestry, and the love that brought the couple to this moment.
Rather than focusing on dogmatic religious instruction.
Exactly, it softens it.
Okay, looking at the big picture of the timeline, I have to ask a practical question. If we're weaving all these different cultural and religious moments together into one blended ceremony, is there a risk of giving the guests, emotional whiplash?
Oh, whiplash is a very real threat, which is why sequencing and time management are so critical. You cannot just spring unfamiliar rituals on a crowd without any context, jumping wildly from one tone to another.
Right, going from super solemn to suddenly everyone's cheering.
Yes, and furthermore, practically speaking, blended ceremonies simply take more time. I mean, you are honoring more elements, you're likely explaining more, and you might be dealing with translations. You just have to build a longer timeline for your ceremony to ensure it feels intentional rather than rushed.
Which brings us to the guest experience, because a brilliantly structured, blended ceremony is a wonderful achievement. But if the people sitting in the folding chairs have no idea what they are watching, the energy in the room is going to completely flatline.
The energy absolutely dies when guests feel confused.
Yeah.
If half the room feels like they're on the outside looking in, they disconnect. They start checking their watches. But there are specific communication tools you can deploy to prevent that and actually draw them in.
What's the first one?
The most traditional yet frequently underutilized tool is the program.
Really? A printed program? How does a program actually change the dynamic in the room?
Think about the physical experience of a bilingual or highly detailed program. Instead of guests whispering to each other in confusion during a ritual they don't recognize, you literally hear the rustle of pages as both sides of the aisle read the same explanation at the exact same time.
Oh, wow, yeah. That auditory cue of everyone being on the same page, literally.
Literally. You name the ritual, you explain its core meaning in 1 or 2 sentences, and you list who is participating. It gives every single guest an anchor to the moment, uniting the room in a shared understanding.
Giving them an anchor is such a great way to phrase it. It's like a roadmap for the ceremony. What is the next tool they can use?
Signage. It's incredibly effective for setting the emotional tone before the event even begins.
Like welcome signs.
Yeah, imagine a beautiful welcome sign near the entrance that says something like, "Today's ceremony honors both of our families. You will see elements from both of our cultures interwoven today, and we are so grateful you are here to witness our two worlds becoming one."
I love that.
It acts as a warm embrace. It lets guests know that difference is the actual theme of the day, and they're invited to celebrate it.
I love how that acts as a preemptive welcome. It tells them to relax and just enjoy the experience, but during the ceremony itself, who is guiding them?
Well, that is the job of your officiant, or emcee, and it is our third major communication tool. A skilled officiant in a blended wedding doesn't just perform a script. They act as a cultural translator for the room.
Okay, so they're bridging the gap.
Exactly. They pause and say, "In this rich tradition, the exchange of these garments symbolizes the shielding of the new couple from hardship." And in a moment, we will hear a reading from another tradition that speaks to that exact same promise of protection.
Wow, so tying them together.
Yes. When an officiant connects those thematic dots, you physically see the guests put their phones away, lean forward, and engage.
Okay, but I have to stop you there because I can hear our listener getting a little nervous right now.
Uh-oh.
If we have the officiant constantly pausing to explain the history and meaning of everything happening, do we cross the line from a romantic wedding ceremony into, a museum-guided tour? Does it kill the romance?
That is the #1 fear couples have when we suggest this, honestly. But the answer is a resounding no. Really, education is not dumbing down your culture. It is an act of radical hospitality. It's inviting people into your world.
Radical hospitality. I love that phrase.
It's true. I
Yeah.
mean, we've stood at the altar and watched guests who arrived looking completely skeptical, like arms crossed, clearly unsure of this unfamiliar environment.
Right.
But when the officiant explains the deep universal meaning behind a ritual, the concepts of love, sacrifice, or family protection, those same skeptical guests are often the ones wiping away tears by the end.
Wow.
When you explain the why, you bridge the gap between two families.
That completely flips the perspective. It's not a lecture, it's an invitation to connect. And I imagine for guests who really want to do their homework beforehand, there are ways to prepare them before they even arrive at the venue.
Absolutely. The fourth tool is your wedding website, FAQ.
Ah.
Whatever platform you are using to host your wedding details, dedicate a section to setting expectations. You can ask questions like, what should I expect at the ceremony? Or, is there a specific dress code that honors either culture? Or, will the ceremony be translated?
That removes all the guesswork.
Exactly. It allows your guests to show up feeling confident and respectful.
So we have carefully navigated the ceremony, we've translated the rituals and built the perfect structure, but then we transition to the reception. And this is where the heavy lifting stops and the effortless joy begins, because we start dealing with universal languages.
Yes. The reception is where the peace treaty is fully celebrated. And the absolute easiest, most accessible fusion point in the entire world is food.
Oh, absolutely.
Food requires zero translation. You do not need a printed program to explain why a delicious meal is wonderful.
No, you don't. Picture walking into a reception and seeing a plate that holds, like, spicy, perfectly seasoned Nigerian jollof rice resting right next to a scoop of rich, creamy Southern mac and cheese.
Oh, yes, please.
Right. Or a dessert table loaded with delicate mochi, sticky sweet baklava, and warm apple pie all side by side.
The sensory experience of that is incredible.
Yeah.
Because food is love in every single language.
Totally.
We've seen couples do Korean BBQ appetizers served immediately before a massive Italian family-style pasta dinner. I mean, you can have dual menus, fusion dishes that literally combine the cuisines, or even signature cocktails representing each heritage.
That sounds amazing.
Guests will talk about a meal like that for decades because it tells the story of your relationship on a plate.
It immediately signals family to everyone in the room. The physical blending of the food literally represents the physical blending of the people. Aside from food, what is the other universal language we can really lean on?
Music. Music is the second easiest bridge between two cultures. Assuming, of course, it is handled with intention and not just thrown onto a random playlist.
Fair point.
We worked with one couple whose music strategy was absolutely brilliant. For the ceremony processional, they hired traditional drummers to honor the groom's heritage, filling the room with this incredible, powerful rhythm.
Oh, that must have felt amazing.
It was stunning. And then for the cocktail hour, they pivoted entirely, bringing in a classical string quartet to honor the bride's family traditions.
That sets such distinct moods for different parts of the day. How did they handle the dance floor when everyone was finally together?
They opened the dance floor with high-energy Afrobeat music, getting every single person out of their chairs. But as the night progressed, they seamlessly transitioned the reception into classic country music.
No way! Afrobeat into country.
Yes. And the remarkable thing was watching both sides of the family dancing to both genres. It reflected the honest reality of who the couple was. The Afrobeat and the country music sitting side by side wasn't a compromise. It was the actual celebration of their new blended family.
That's beautiful. Nobody felt like their culture was an afterthought. These examples are so inspiring because they sound perfectly balanced. But mathematical equality is often a trap, isn't it? Like, we have to address the reality that on paper, things might not look perfectly 50-50.
We do. And we need to state this very clearly to relieve some of the pressure couples put on themselves. Equal does not always mean half and half.
Right.
Some traditions are inherently going to take up more time or be more visually prominent. I mean, a full traditional Catholic Mass is fundamentally longer than a modern secular vow exchange.
Yeah, you can't just trim it down to 5 minutes.
No, you can't. And a high-energy 15-minute cultural dance doesn't always have an exact equivalent in another culture that you can just slot in next to it to make the timeline perfectly symmetrical.
So the goal isn't a literal mathematical division of minutes on a clock. The goal is representation.
Exactly. The goal is ensuring that both families feel deeply honored at that core non-negotiable level we talked about at the beginning. If both sides see their most cherished elements respected, they won't be sitting there with a stopwatch timing the events.
What happens when one partner is genuinely less connected to their own cultural background? Is it acceptable for them to just step back and let the other person's traditions take the spotlight?
It is entirely acceptable and honestly surprisingly common. One partner might feel that while their heritage is important, they aren't deeply tied to specific wedding rituals, and they would genuinely love for their partner's vibrant cultural traditions to take center stage.
Okay, so that imbalance is okay.
That imbalance is perfectly fine, with one massive caveat. It must be a conscious choice made by the couple, not an assumption forced upon them by an overbearing family member.
Right, which brings everything full circle back to constant communication. You have to keep checking in with your partner.
Throughout the entire planning process, you need to pause, look at the person you are marrying, and ask, do you feel like this day still represents both of us?
And if the answer is no?
If the answer is ever no, you stop, recalibrate, and adjust your plans. Neither of you should ever feel like you sacrificed your core identity just to keep the peace.
We've covered so much ground today, moving from the initial anxiety of the diplomatic summit all the way to the joy of a fully blended dance floor. Let's distill all of this down into the most critical takeaways for the listener who is right in the thick of planning their own wedding.
Okay, there are 3 actionable takeaways we want you to hold on to. First, go to each of your families and ask them to identify just 2 to 3 non-negotiables. Remind yourselves that depth always beats breadth.
Yes, exactly 2 or 3.
Give those few traditions the massive spotlight they deserve, and let the rest remain flexible.
Second, remember that a beautiful structure only works if people understand it. Give your guests context. Use your printed programs to provide an anchor, use signage to set a welcoming tone, and empower your officiant to act as a cultural translator so that everyone in the room feels invited into the moment.
Finally, when the heavy lifting of the ceremony is complete, lean heavily into the universal languages of the reception. Food and music are your absolute easiest, most stress-free fusion points. They bring people together naturally and joyfully, requiring zero explanation.
As you go back to your planning spreadsheets and your family conversations, I really want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. When you are sitting there, stressing over how to perfectly weave these 2 different worlds together without causing a family crisis, remember what you are actually doing.
They're not diluting 2 ancient traditions until they're unrecognizable.
Exactly. You are building something entirely new. Figuring out how to honor your partner's family while fiercely protecting your own boundaries right now is actually your very first practice run for how you're going to navigate differences together for the next 50 years of your marriage. The wedding is really just day 1 of that beautiful collaboration.
It really is the ultimate training ground for your marriage. You're tackling something incredibly complex, and you're creating something beautiful together.
So take a deep breath, go have those meaningful conversations about what truly matters, and build a day that looks exactly like your new family. You can absolutely do this.
Check out You Had Me at ido.com for more inspiration. We are cheering you on.
You've been listening to Planning Your I Do from You Had Me at I Do. Show notes, planning help, and ceremony support are at youhadmeatido.com/podcast. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, and send it to a bride friend who needs answers instead of more stress at 2 in the morning. Thanks for listening.